This is the tale of an honorable warrior who takes an unforgivable path beyond redemption. But for now, we start at the beginning. Our journey begins in what can only be described as a dead place. This realm of gray and fog is what's known as the Voidheart. It's an area that exists outside of mortal comprehension. A dreamscape, another world. The true nature of the Voidheart is unknown. Speaking to the nearest person upon entering the Voidheart, and it becomes abundantly clear what we're here for straight away. This is the headquarters of the Knives of Elis, an assassination group. And the contract that we've signed is no holds barred. You're here to do jobs, and those jobs involve killing the innocent. Having some second thoughts, I head over to the head honcho of the Knives of Elis, Elis herself. Unfortunately, it seems clear very quickly that there's no out of this contract. Once again, hoping to escape fate, we head over and speak to this entity, the Void Mother. After listening to several of the Void Mother's tirades, eventually we're able to depart. Waking up on an island surrounded by water, as we make our way to the coastline, it's an ambush. The cruel life of a cold-blooded assassin on full display. While I fought back best I could against the mystery assailant, under-equipped and under-skilled, my fate was sealed. Understanding that I needed to get stronger in order to avoid encounters like this, I headed out for Minitirsa for a fabled mechanism, the Trial of One. Here, all of my items that I had with me would be taken from me, and I would be put to the test and pushed to my limits. Fighting against several ferocious monsters, I would make my way slowly through the Trial of One, eventually completing it, and I would exit the trial significantly stronger than when I went in. I would continue this predominantly pacifist route, but there was continuously a nagging feeling in the back of my mind. A calling to the realm of the void, and a feeling of obligation to the contract that I had signed. I knew one way or another, I would eventually need to earn my keep. And so begrudgingly, I accepted my first contract. I opted at first for a stealthy approach, hoping to catch my opponent off guard and take them by surprise. Upon finally IDing the target that I was looking for, this was not how it panned out. It became abundantly clear very quickly that they knew why I was here. And to say that the fight was one-sided would be putting it lightly. With a clear lack of experience, the fight was short-lived at best. In a fit of frustration, I would head back to the general location that I was at before and run into a completely separate opponent. This time around, seemingly less equipped than the previous one. On the outset, this seemed true. In reality, I was in for a world of hurt. Once again, I would find myself on the back foot, and once again, I would find myself slain by my opponent's hand. This time, with my soul being dragged deep into the depths. The depths, however, is the least of my worries. The soulless monsters in the Trials of the Depths pose little to no threat compared to the souled players of the overworld. And so with general ease, I ascended back up to the realm of the living. It was at this point that I came to an understanding. While stealth as a viability initially seemed like it was going to be my best ally, my cover would be immediately blown by the clothes on my back. Anyone with any intuition whatsoever is going to notice that if someone's wearing the uniform of the Assassin's Guild, well, they're probably there to kill them. And so in order to avoid that conclusion being drawn immediately, I crafted myself another set of armor in order to hopefully retain some of the element of surprise that I would have on my opponents. I would quickly put this strategy to the test as my next opponent was hiding out on the Isle of Vigils. As I entered the Temple of the Blade, there they were. A seemingly inexperienced player practicing against the instructors in the area. Because I wasn't wearing the assassin's uniform, they seemed to be none the wiser as to why I had showed up. I figured it would be better to bide my time, so I placed down a campfire, used my flint, and just hung out for a bit. This appeared to have worked, and successfully lulled my target into a false sense of security. Once I started to notice them taking several really hard hits from the instructor, I leapt into action, assassinating them from behind, and then using my revenge to teleport straight through the wall and be unable to attack my target. Yeah, alright, I got nothing on this one. My next target I would find fighting Ministry scouts on the snowy hills of Minitirsa. I attempted to catch them by surprise, but the Ministry made that rather difficult, revealing my intentions immediately. Eventually, the Ministry was taken care of, and it was time for the fight. My opponent was wielding a spear along with the Gale attunement. The spear in of itself posed a problem, as my choice of weapon, the dagger, has very little range. The spear, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. This meant that if my opponent simply spaced me out, I was going to run into some problems. The fight would prove to be extremely long and drawn out, with my opponent consistently throwing out flurries of attacks and me attempting to capitalize whenever possible. However, eventually, I would finally catch that break that I was hoping for. I knocked out the target, and that's the end of him. With a win under my belt, my confidence was finally increasing. I knew that my next target laid on the exact same island that I was on, so I set off to find them. And find them I did. Unfortunately, my element of surprise was completely wasted when they accidentally hit me with a stray hit. My new opponent was a wielder of a sword. This posed some of the same problems that the spear did, but not quite to the same extent. Unlike last time, I was able to make pretty short work of this man. I would continue my winning streak by taking on someone directly outside of the Crypt of the Unbroken. The battle spans several minutes across a variety of the terrain of the mountains. These areas are generally treacherous because a single stray hit can potentially send you off the mountain and careening to your demise. And as my poor luck would have it, as a general rule of thumb, I'm the one who falls off the cliffs. Alas, in this battle of attrition, I would eventually win out, my opponent being not thrilled. This luck that I'd seemingly been having with fights up until this point would eventually reach its untimely end. My next target would be found in the cliff faces of Lower Eurasia. I saw them fighting a group of NPCs and leapt into action. Because of their fight from earlier, I made pretty short work of this guy. After they were knocked out and I picked them up, they were clearly upset and demanded that I let them down in order to have a fair fight. I just couldn't shake the feeling. It felt wrong. I let the man down and placed a campfire. They would be getting their fair fight, for better or for worse. This would prove to be a harsh lesson to learn. I extended honor towards my opponent, but they would absolutely not be extending the same courtesy to me. Time and time again, I would be thrown off the cliffs, losing substantial chunks of health each time. And because of that, an otherwise winnable fight would prove unwinnable. I would not forget this moment. Heading to the bounty board straight away, and it was time for my first very morally questionable act. I pulled a contract, and it said my target was right here, in the Void Heart. Finding them was child's play. I began the ambush, and the fight was on. My opponent, a sword-wielding vision shaper, would be able to manipulate my mind to make me see things that weren't really there, whether it be an entire environment itself, or clones of the opponent that I would have to fight off. The fight itself seemed to be going my way for the most part. That was until my opponent fled, jumped off a cliff, and vanished without a trace. By this point in my journey, I'd completed several bounty contracts for the Knives of Elis. Because of that, I wanted to acquire another power that could potentially help me in my journey. So, sailing over to the Eastern Luminant, I made my way to Meteor Isle. Here, I would find Cestus. Cestus is a member of the Ministry who's able to teach the Murmur Tacit. And due to the amount of bounty contracts that I'd completed, Cestus would teach me Tacit immediately. Tacit is a power that allows us to turn invisible to the naked eye. It has a range limit, but on the whole, when it comes to stealth, this tool is invaluable. With Tacit obtained, I went to go test my new power, and yeah, I don't know. Heading away from Meteor Isle, and I took a quick pit stop. This pit stop would be interesting, to say the least.
What are you looking at? Show some respect. I'm a bit of a big deal around here. All right. Those shoes, the equivalent of an Arisia bandit's life work. Those clothes are the most poor quality excuse of an outfit I've ever seen. Where did you get that one? Off a corpse? Don't even get me started on all these gaudy knickknacks you're wearing. This isn't fashion. This is an embarrassment. I bet you regret your words right now. Bet you want to run home to mother? Look at you, all embarrassed and shaking. What? Do words like that hurt? You wouldn't have survived a minute in Roblox 1291. Swine. What is that haircut? I've seen mud skippers with a better sense of style than you. No wonder everyone picks fights with you. Have you looked in a mirror? And oh, that stench. Clean yourself up. You smell awful. Do you really think you matter to God? Give up. Go back home and never leave it. Don't ever look at me again.
So, yeah. Don't fuck with the guy. While continuing my assassination escapades, I would hear of someone looking for me. This person was Kenny of Etria. Kenny was looking for someone to research into the ruling power of Etris, the Lord Regent. Seeing as I had been so invested in my contracts up until this point, I decided, why not take a bit of a break? I asked around town about the Lord Regent, and as soon as I did, Kenny vanished. I would find Kenny in the same state as some of my victims from earlier. I could tell a killer when I saw one, and this Lord Regent clearly was not an innocent party. But considering that it's not as if I'm an innocent party myself, there could be money to be made here. With an appointment seemingly guaranteed, I made my way up to the Lord Regent's castle. And when I made my way through the halls and eventually up the stairs to speak to him, the Lord Regent immediately pegged me for exactly what I was, a void-touched assassin. How he knew, well, it wasn't quite for me to question. The fact of the matter was, I was alive and he had a task for me. That task? Eliminate the Duke of Arisia. On paper, sounds like child's play. At this point, assassination missions are my specialty. So with that in mind, I breached Duke Arishia's laboratory and prepared myself to take him on.
So you're the one running about tripping my alarms, Care to explain yourself? That thing is finally making its move, I had thought it would come personally, but the Lord Regent must see me as a mere agent's workload. Everything I can to stop the oncoming catastrophe, you indolent worm. With it, I turn useless fools like you into something of use. You don't know what I do for all mankind. Etria has really stooped to hiring the blades of its enemies. That island's prospects are certainly grim. There's no real point in explaining further, as this is the end of the line. Even if you gave up on the Forge, I'm not about to let one who's seen this manor's layout roam free.
The Duke had spoke of some unknown catastrophe. What this unknown catastrophe could be, frankly, just felt like posturing from the Duke. And so due to that, I attacked without question. The unfortunate fact of the matter, however, became abundantly clear very quickly. I was not prepared for this fight. The Duke was nothing like any of the opponents that I had fought before, possessing not only an extremely strong shield of Gale that made attacking him feel almost pointless, but he also possessed several attacks that I was consistently having trouble dodging. When push ended up coming to shove, the Duke just had one over on me. I perished, going back to square one. My next attempt proved very lucky. I ran into a kind wanderer outside of the Duke's laboratory, and they agreed to help me take him out. Between the two of us, the Duke proved to be a significantly easier threat to deal with. Within seconds, his shield was brought down, and it was time to attack the man himself. The Duke tried several methods in order to take us out, including attempts to sick minions on us. At the end of the day, none of this would pan out. We would knock down the Duke, and he would fall by our hand. After the defeat of the Duke, I figured that I should continue trying to test my skills. But unfortunately, this is where some frustration that had been building up since the beginning of my journey would finally reach its head. You see, what I haven't touched on too much during this journey is my choice of weapon, the dagger. The dagger is a weapon that trades range and power for a quick swing speed. And unfortunately, in the hands of someone like me, someone not super adept at combat, well, it wasn't a very good choice to say the least. Oftentimes leading me to get hit after hit after hit on my opponent, having them hit me maybe 3 or 4 times, and then losing in the long run. This frustration would finally reach its breaking point. I fought this opponent where I won interaction after interaction after interaction, but at the end of the day, I still lost. I gave them the courtesy of a GG, and their response is, "I don't know what the plan was, not gonna lie." And to break character for a second here, this pissed me the fuck off in real life. I'm trying to learn how to get better, and I'm getting BM'd because of my fucking weapon choice. Because my ass can't do shit with this weapon, and I am suffering through it. I couldn't put a scratch on Duke by myself because I couldn't do enough posture damage, and seemingly every single person I fight, I have to put in 3 times the amount of effort that they do, and then they win anyway. So, I gave up. I ended everything and started from scratch. This is the part of the video where we start to break character a lot, and it becomes a hell of a lot more meta than it does a story video. So I apologize in advance. A lot of things simply didn't go to plan, and that's why this video took so long to come out in the first place. On my second go around, I decided to go with a sword. A great all-around option, and it seemed like it would probably be my best choice when it came to fighting others as someone relatively new to fighting other players. This time around, I made the conclusion that it would be best to power up and level by fighting bosses rather than trying to fight other players with an ill-equipped build. Because of this, I ended up in Boatman's Watch, and I had some interesting encounters. At the end of it all, though, I screwed up. Coming out of one of my boss fights, I checked my stats screen, did some math, and realized that I had misallocated some stat points. I was at power level 16, and I had to start all over again. I headed to the Void Heart, picked what I assumed would be the hardest contract available, and teleported to the opponent. Naturally, because I was fighting an over-leveled opponent and playing like an idiot on purpose because I was trying to die, they killed me. And in an extremely rare case of mercy, they decided to spare my life. The one time that I try to die, and they won't kill me. Go figure. I told them that I was trying to get killed and had them kill me. A new life, a new weapon, and a new me. Unsurprisingly, the switch to sword panned out fantastically in my favor. Due to my significantly easier ability to, well, actually hit my opponent, I won fight after fight after fight, with a significantly higher success rate than I ever had before. In record time, I had completed a boatload of bounty contracts, and once again hit the threshold where I could obtain Tacit. It was at this point in my journey that a secondary objective would present itself. I sought power at whatever the cost. Gone were the days where I would potentially give mercy to my enemies by giving them a fair fight. They didn't deserve it. They knew it, and I knew it. In this world, it's kill or be killed, and power is the only metric that matters. And when it comes to power, there's no safer bet for powerful entities than the Ministry. This faction was able to drown an entire civilization. And from rumbles on the streets, I know full well that the Lord Regent of Etria is one of them. I knew I would need to show my dedication to the cause in order to gain the power that I sought. And I figured no better way to do that than to recon their greatest enemies, the Divers. Descending into the depths and heading over to Castle Light, I spoke to Claris, one of the leaders of the Divers. She assigned me with the task of finding out what happened to some of her subordinates that entered Layer 2. Seeing this as a potential opportunity to get on her good side, I accepted. In the depths of Layer 2, I would face several trials, including an intense battle against a blood magic user known as Chaser. After he was defeated, I made my way even further into the depths of Layer 2. After traversing the lost city of New Kirsa, I would eventually be faced with the avatar of a drowned god themselves, the Scion of Etheron. But at this point, even an avatar of a drowned god was no match for me. The Scion was defeated, and I exited New Kirsa. Upon ascending back up to Layer 1, I had clearly earned Claris's trust. And with that trust, I convinced her to become one of her most trusted subordinates, a Dawnwalker. With my newfound oath at my disposal, I knew that the intel that I could gather here could be invaluable to the Ministry. And so with said info in hand, I would approach the Lord Regent. Rather than looking for information, however, they instead sought the death of the Duke of Aricia. This should be short work for someone of my skill set. Well, that's what I thought anyway, but the fight would prove to be arduous nonetheless. There was a point where it really seemed like it should have been over, and in fairness, it probably should have been. But luck was clearly on my side, and at the end of the day, the Duke would fall by my hand. With the Duke defeated, I weighed my options. I figured that if I returned to the Lord Regent, still under the oath of Dawnwalker, I could be in for a world of hurt, with in all likelihood no chance to explain myself. And due to this, I once again descended into the depths of my own accord. While down here, I would obtain my resonance in order to get the ability to talk to the drowned god Yun Shul. Yun Shul would allow me to sever my oath to Claris, branding me an oathbreaker. And as an oathbreaker, I would once again be able to swear myself to a different allegiance. With that in mind, now I needed to ascend back up to the overworld once again. I headed to the back door of the drowned city when I got ambushed. A corrupted mudskipper broodlord along with a megalodont wanted my head. I figured, shouldn't it be that big of a deal? So I attempted to climb up the elevator shaft anyways. This was a colossal mistake. I was just barely unable to get to the top of the elevator shaft, and a slight bit of damage that I took from a megalodont through the wall would make it impossible to reach the top. Not only that, but the broodlord would clip straight through the wall and start attacking me. Alright, so breaking character again, now I'm pissed the fuck off. As you can probably imagine, wiping 3 characters up until this point, 1 because of the weapon I didn't like, 1 because I screwed up the build, and then 1 because I got cheesed by the broken AI, I was pretty unhappy. In case it wasn't abundantly clear by this point, my goal at the end of the video was to obtain the Contractor Oath. And I had gotten pretty much directly to right before I'd gotten the oath, and then got memed. Not only that, but I probably would have gotten the oath, but as much as I would like to say that the Dawnwalker bit was really cool and I did it for storytelling, it was actually a misclick. I screwed up. So I don't have a whole lot of footage for the final life where I actually succeeded because I was just angry. So cue biting your tongue after talking to the Lord Regent and defeating the Duke, cue getting my bell, cue obtaining the Contractor Oath. And finally cue a strange, unknown individual who's definitely not an alternate account, in case anyone asks, who gave me the progression to max out the oath because they're a kind soul. Yeah, this one was a bit of a dumpster fire, but I did it, I guess.